What's up, you guys? It's Toby Rosario, and in today's video, this is part of the case study where I'm literally going to walk you through from A to Z all the way to closing on this particular deal that we're working on. Um, this came from a direct mail piece. It was a specific area I was targeting, small list, and so we took the call, the initial call, as you can see here, December 20th, right? So my VA took the call. And what I have my VA, I have my VA do. She has a script she follows, and initially she just wants to gather some very basic information and wants to get an idea of the sense of motivation, right? The reason behind why the seller is selling. So, um, so let's just read the comments. And the good thing about the CRM is you can create tasks based on the status of the lead, and I'm going to show you guys that um, as I move along. So essentially, the seller, the seller called in from one of our direct mail pieces. So the VA said spoke with Peter Mitchell. He sounds motivated, doesn't know the zip code. Property was inherited, and he just wants to get rid of it since he lives in a different state, and he wants to sell ASAP. So what I tell my VA is when she hears certain keywords, or when she knows or she senses motivation, you're gonna color code that lead to green, right? Because green means money. So um, so essentially she wrote that he was motivated. Um, Now it doesn't. So I gave the seller a call, and I forgot to notate the comment section here. So the seller wanted $90,000. Okay, the seller wanted $90,000 in the initial phone call, right? So he told my VA he wanted 90. Of course, my VA always counters with, "Well, what's the least you take if I were to pay in cash?" Blah blah blah. You know the whole, you know, that whole deal with that rebuttal. So um, the seller said 70,000. Now we're still way off price, right? So he said 70,000, but based on the conversation she had with him, she knew that he was motivated. So we put him up in a follow-up system, right? But before that, once she told me he was motivated and he went from 90 to 70 from one initial question, right? He dropped on the price 20 grand. So that showed me he was motivated, right? So I gave the seller a call, and I actually offered 15,000. And this was back in January 2nd. Now there was, because of the holidays and all that, I couldn't get a hold of him, and I should have noted the file here. But this is when I spoke with the seller. I told him, I can offer 15,000, right? Because we need to get it. We need to get these property anywhere between 15 to 25,000 or so we can make a nice chunk of change, right? So he said he would get back to me. He didn't like curse me out or anything. And initially, he told me that he was going to think about it and get back to me. Right. So we set up a follow up in the CRM, Freedom Soft. So we followed up in a week. We followed up 3 days later. So I left a voicemail with a Google Voice number that I have, and then I got in contact with him about 4 days later. So spoke with seller. Seller would not take less than 50,000 cash. Not willing to negotiate. Put in a long-term follow-up. Now here's what's important, right? I knew that he was motivated, right? Because he went from 90 to 70 to 50 in 1 month. And so that showed me he was motivated. He wanted to get rid of the property because he was living out of state. He couldn't maintain the property. He didn't want to rent it out, and he didn't know anywhere to go because he just essentially didn't know what was the next option or the next best option. Because he definitely didn't want to fix it up and rehab it because he didn't have the money. He doesn't have the money, and he didn't want to rent it because it would just be too hard to maintain out of state. So I spoke with him. January 6th, he wouldn't take 50,000. So I said, okay, we're gonna put him up in a follow up. So we followed up about a month later. Spoke with seller, still won't budge on the price. States he will list it on the auction site to get most amount of money. Follow up set in April. Now, um, throughout this whole process, when we're communicating, and I'm having the conversation with him, I'm still trying to build. I'm still building rapport. We're not always talking about the property. We're just talking about life and situations and things like that to kind of get him off guard, right? And then once we get back, once we circle back to, the property, I always mention, well, what are you going to do if you don't sell it? What are your options? And tell me what plan you got thought out if you don't sell to me, right? And he didn't have a plan, right? He just kept saying he doesn't want to sell less, for less than 50,000 in cash. He wanted to list it on a auction site. So whatever the case is. So February, so I follow up with him in March, about a month later. Left message with his wife, couldn't get a hold of him. So what I did was I called the county. And I found out that there was a tax lien on the property, and it was around $10,000, right? So what I did was I was going to give him a call back, let him know that that somebody purchased the tax lien for about $10,000, and that if he didn't pay that tax lien, the person who purchased that tax lien was going to take ownership in about 2 years or so, whenever that redemption period was up. So he was going to lose the property for $10,000, right? And so he still did not want to budge after that, right? He said, "I don't care." The tone was, it was all about pride, right? He said, "I'd rather lose it for 10 grand or 11 grand, whatever it was. I think it was like 10 grand tax lien than to sell it for 15,000, right? And make something, and he'd rather not make anything than make something for pride." So, but I still knew he was motivated and he was running out of options, right? He didn't have any options. So what I did was I followed up with him in April. I upped my offer, and I essentially, in that conversation, I told him, so what do you need? What are you looking to walk away with after the tax lien, right? And he told me 15,000. So the tax lien was 10. So if I went up, so essentially he wanted around 25,000. He came all the way down from 50 to 25. I didn't want to get to 25. So what I said was, I said, you know what, I can't give you the 15, but I can meet you in the middle. I can do around 12,005, right? So I offered him 23,500. He says he's going to call me back in 2 days. So what I did was, he never called me, but I didn't call him because I didn't want to sound too desperate. So I knew that he wanted to sell, and that he needed he just wanted to get as much as he can, and I wasn't going to budge on that price. So he called me back. He said that he was going to go with this company, this other investor who made him a higher offer than mine's. I told him, I actually called bullshit on it, because I asked him. I said, who's the investor? Because I'm a local investor and I know all the investors around town. Maybe they're one of my friends or a good friend of mine. And he paused for like 30 seconds, and he didn't want to give me the name. And then he just said, I'm just not going to tell you. I said, okay, Mr. Mitchell. Good luck with everything. We'll just part as friends. Let me know if you ever change your mind, right? So I didn't call him. And as you can see here, April 28th, he gave me a call back. He called me that morning, and he asked me, am I still interested in the property? I said yes, if we can agree on the price we talked about. So long story short, we kept going back and forth. I probably could have got him for around 20,000, three grand cheaper, because he sounded very motivated. Not sure what the situation was. Maybe something happened where he needed the money. So he sounded very motivated to get the deal done. So he said he was going to fax. So I was going to fax. He wanted me to fax over the contract, and he was going to try to figure out how I was going to gain access to the property. Now I made that offer sight unseen, and here's why I made it. It's an area where I know my buyers are going to buy, right? And if I knew that if I can get it at a certain price, even if it was, I knew that I can get it at a certain price. I knew the price I had to get it at, and even if it was a lot worse than I initially thought, I can always go back to the center. Look, it's not the way I thought it was going to be, and try to reduce the price that way. But my number one priority was to get that property on the contract, because then I have control. So waiting on the contract from the seller. Signed copy, waiting for fax from the seller. So got signed contract by the seller, will market to buyers and send the title company money to start the title work. So that was that weekend. Sent contract to the title company to start the title search. And then I sold it. I already had some buyers lined up, but what I did was I just sent everybody to the property. I sent 3 people to the property, and I told them just to go look at it. I didn't want to be there to show them. I wanted them to go see it when my other buyers were going to show up. So, after I got an offer for 33, 35, and I got 2 offers for 35 and 1 for 33. So I went with the 35 because it was a buyer I already sold the property to earlier that year, actually last year. So I was familiar with him, and somebody I already done business with, and it was the same offer as the other one. So I got the signed contract by the buyer, $2,000 non-refundable deposit, and the total fees, $12,000 assignment fee. I'm waiting for the title to get back. Now, if you notice, so I sent the contracts to the title company that Monday, and I'm still haven't received the. So over at where I'm at, my county, for whatever reason, they take longer, or that particular city takes longer to get title search back. So than other areas, right? Than other towns and cities. So it usually takes around 2 weeks or so, or it takes much longer than other towns I've dealt with. So I'm still waiting for title. Hopefully, there's no title issues, and this could be a smooth process. So once we get title work, we set up a closing date, and then I'll go ahead and get this to closing. Now, the other thing I want to go over is this task section, where you can actually add task to, I'm just gonna